Well, thank you to all of you, the organization, for the invitation. Thank you to Carlos Mota and to Fatima. As I already told you, that you've been fantastic during the organization of the event. And as you can already see, I'm going to impose on you my foreign accent as a way of queering also the event a little bit. Don't really believe the manifesto thing, because I'm not really going to do a manifesto, and I'm really happy to talk after Thea, because I think we're very close in many ways, many ways. So maybe you can almost read it like kind of a continuation of what Thea was saying. And also I'm kind of sorry that it's already 1 o'clock, because this is going to be like the political theory moment and the philosophy moment. So if you want to run away, you can do it now. Since my idea, which is quite crazy, since it's the first time that I'm speaking in the UK, my idea was kind of remaking the history of sexuality in 15 minutes. And then I thought, I'm not going to do it, whatever, but then I couldn't avoid it. You know, I'm have all you around me here, and I say, well, I have to do it anyway. So I'm going to try to do that with you today. And probably this sign of 5 minutes will come very soon, or whatever. So I'm not going to give you any manifesto. I think that I don't want to be kind of pessimistic. I'm always very optimistic. But I won't be today, in the sense that I really think that we need to invent new practices of gender and sexual resistance within global capitalism. And in order to do that, we will need something else that just like slogans and manifestos and things going on in 15 minutes, it might be not the right way. I think that we need to take museums like this and transform them into spaces of public dialogue during hours. We need to talk long time together. We really need a long time to talk. And now you're like, oh my God, this is, you know, he, she, whatever, is going to talk for a long. Well, so we kind of need to understand the complexity of the different regimes of power that are constructing bodies and subjectivities if we really want to fight against them. Otherwise, we might be fighting the wrong cause. We might be just like, fighting a lot, like making a lot of noise, but for nothing, or even for the wrong causes. So it is kind of, in a way, what I like to do today with you is kind of just present you kind of a framework to understand sexual and gender politics today and the complexity of it, and to see where you see it, where you stay, how you're going to position within that complex framework. And I'm going to start with Michel Foucault. As you probably know, Michel Foucault elaborated in the 70s a notion that actually took from the Nazis and everything, but I'm not going to go into that right now. And this notion was biopolitics. And Foucault used that notion to explain the transition within the 18th century in Europe from what he called the sovereign power towards what he's going to call biopower. And as you probably know, Foucault understood modern sexuality as an effect of biopower. But what does it mean, and how, from political theory point of view, we can make struggles or just like fabricate new ways of fighting from that notion? Well, what Foucault is saying is that basically before the 18th century, power was defined as a necropolitical technique, meaning as a technique of giving death, a technique of giving death. Of course, the power figure, the embodiment of the power figure was the king, and by extension, the father, the patriarchal figure. And that has like enormous consequences, as you're going to see. Because what is going to happen is that masculinity, the figure of the father, is going to be defined not by the power of giving life, but by the power of giving death, by the techniques of death, which, if you understand that well, anybody that is in this audience and is being produced historically as a male body, it means that your masculinity has been historically defined by your power to give death. I don't know yet what we're going to do with that, but we have to think collectively, how can we deal with that? I think that personally, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm not transitioning to masculinity, even though you see me, whatever, no, right? What my desire has been all my life, my desire has been occupying that position. Giving death, yes, I want to give death as well. I want to have that power, but at the same time, politically, I don't want to have it. I know that that's not exactly what I want. So if anyone that is in this audience still identifies with that model of sovereign power, well, then you assume what you are identifying with. If you want to continue to say, well, I'm a male, well, then you understand what this is meaning. And then you have to carry over yourself the right to give death. Well, whatever. Of course, I have 15 minutes, so I cannot tell you much more about that. But the big issue here is those regimes of power that, of course, go from, let's say, early on to the 17th, 18th century, were defined by theology, meaning the techniques of production of truth were theology-based, right? And you're going to see that what is going to be really tricky in the 18th century, and is very, very much close to the way we define our bodies right now, is that those techniques of producing truth are going to be displacing from theology into science, right? So it's a kind of a secularization of the techniques of producing truth, because that's what when you say, I'm a man or I'm a woman, what you're saying is like producing a truth about yourself, right? That's what you're doing. So, well, basically, what Foucault is teaching us is that during the 18th century, we're going to see a displacement, an epistemological rupture from these necropolitical techniques, these techniques of giving death, to new techniques of producing and managing life, right? And that's what Foucault is going to call biopower, those techniques of managing life. And of course, the business of biopower is the reproduction of life. So the female figure, you see, as basically the father and the male figure was the central political figure of these sovereign necropolitical regimes, the female figure is the center of biopolitical government. So again, now we're going to see, now we are in the second paradox. If anybody here, any of you, that has been defined by the medical regime as having a uterus, and therefore as being a center of biopolitical reproduction, that's the way you are defined. I mean, you are defined as sperm producers or uterus. If anybody here that still wants to identify as biopolitical factory and says like, yeah, I do identify, come the power of of reproduction of life, come to me, and I do identify, I do not identify as a biopolitical factory of any sort. So that's why I do also de-identify, or disidentify, I don't know how you say in English, with this assignation that has been given to me of become a reproductive uterus, meaning being female. Well, before the 5-minute thing comes immediately, and all the things that I have to tell you, well, the thing is that biopower is very complex, and we will need really a long time to start like understanding, like really unpacking all the levels of biopower. But let's see that the key issues that will affect the way we have to revolt or the way we have to resist. One is the invention of femininity as anatomical entity and as being this uterus that must be controlled by power. And the other one is going to be these new medical discourses that are going to define as natural the continuity between sexuality and reproduction. 5 minutes, I told you. The continuity between sexuality and reproduction. So why homosexuality was considered pathological? Because it's not a reproductive biopolitical practice. That's why. We are in terms of being homosexuals, or being treated as homosexuals, is because we are a biopolitical failure. That's the reason why, right? So basically, that was the, and it's very long, because within here I will have to tell you also the invention of race as a scientific notion, which is a key question within biopolitics, but of course I don't have the time. And of course, the key of the prohibition of interracial marriage and reproduction, right? That is one of the main political strategies of biopolitics. Well, all this is quite complex already, right? Meaning because of the sovereign power, you're considered man or woman. Because of biopolitics, if you're a woman, you are considered as a reproductive uterus, and at the same time, you can be defined as heterosexual or homosexual. But let me tell you that that is not the end of it. Those notions that we continue using, and I would claim today, we have to refuse them totally, collectively. We have to say, stop. We don't want any more those notions. They have to disappear from the documents, from papers, immediately. Male, female, homosexual, heterosexual. The whole marriage question is introducing again within the law the notions of homosexuality and heterosexuality. Those notions are obsolete because we are not anymore in a biopolitical regime. We are in what I call a pharmacopornographic regime. Right, there we go. And now we have the images and we don't have any more time. But anyway, so the thing, just let me tell you a few sketchy things. These techniques have nothing to do with biopolitics, dear friends. So homosexual, heterosexuals, you can already go to bed, whatever, nothing, forget it. These new techniques are, let me see if I can, well, they come from they were kind of, in a way, a sketch or kind of produced at the beginning of the 20th century when the medical discourse is going to invent the notion of hormone that has completely changed the way we understand the body. The notion of hormone introduces a media model to understand the body. But anyway, I don't also have time to tell you that. But as you see the new investment during the 50s, you recognize some of the images. I go to one image that this one, sorry that you didn't see the first. Can we go back to the previous one? What is going to happen in the 50s is that all the war technologies that were developed during the Second World War are going to be transformed into technologies of production of the body and sexuality. Now the next one I can do it myself. So you have the bombs before, and now you see that it's exactly the same, right? Those bombs from the Second World War were transformed into hair dryers. And that of course, that you're saying, like, this is insane. Yeah, it is exactly the same that is happening as a cultural movement. And some of the things that happened in the 40s, 50s, the invention of the notion of gender that didn't exist before, and that has nothing to do with the notion of sex. Sex was defined by nature. Gender is going to be defined by the techniques that can be used to produce it. And those techniques are surgical and chemical, are hormonal, are endocrinology. And of course, as you know, that notion is invented within the management of intersexual bodies. What the medicine discourse is going to call intersexual bodies. Again, a lot of people have been referring to that today, and we don't have time to enter into the details. But what is interesting is that the notions of intersexuality and transsexuality that are going to come with the invention of the notion of gender that have nothing to do with the way biopolitical discourse was understanding gender, sexuality, and sexual identity before. This has nothing to do with reproduction anymore. And so we see now the explosion, the commercialization of the hormonal techniques. And of course, what is going to be let's say like the bomb that is going to kill the biopolitical regime is going to be the invention of the pill in the 50s. The pill, as you know, is a chemical hormonal technique that is going to come to separate heterosexuality from reproduction, which means that heterosexuality doesn't exist anymore. It's a fake. It's a total fake. It was a somatic fiction before that was really supported by institutions like marriage, but now it's a chemical fallacy. So if anybody, again here, that continues to say, oh, I'm heterosexual, or I'm homosexual, what are you talking about? According to what regime? Are you living in the 17th century or whatever? I mean, what are we talking about here? So basically, and you know as well that the pill was invented and tested, was invented in the US, but was tested in Rio Piedras in Puerto Rico, and was used also as a technique of management of race. So I cannot go into that right now, but it was, I mean, the techniques of controlling and managing reproduction have a lot to do with techniques of producing race. That's why the way we fight has to be really race and gender struggles must be hand with hand, right? So, and now I see already all the science that was, and the last bomb that happened in the 50s was the transformation of pornography into popular culture. That happened with Playboy and with right? So really, pornography became the new media form. And that is, if you think about the biopolitical regime, where basically every drop of a sperm should be used for reproduction, that is a lot of waste, right? That's a lot of waste. Why? Because now hormones, a sperm, and think about the bank of a sperm, think about so-called assisted reproduction. Heterosexuality is also assisted reproduction. It's just politically assisted reproduction, right? So basically, you have there a new management of sexuality and the body that is not for reproduction itself. It's for the production of capital. And that is the regime where we are right now. And that's why that is demanding new ways of struggling, new ways of fighting that we have to invent, that are not going to be like, oh, thank you, that are not going to be like, oh, I have it, I give you a manifesto, let's see, we go, 1, 2, 3. No, we are in a big shit here, I mean. You know what I mean? I mean, when I see people that tell me like, oh, I'm not going well, I'm saying like, how could you go well? You have like 3 regimes of power that are like completely working against each other within your body. I mean, so therapy, you know, we need it there. So that's why political therapy is that. It's like undoing those regimes of power. And I'm going to stop there and we can continue the discussion. Thank you.